First, I want to thank the governor for this great opportunity. We've got Senator Teston, and also I want to thank Representative Skoronsky, who co-sponsored the legislation. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. I have members of the National Guard back here. I'll introduce them. Please raise your hand. Just let folks know who you are. Major Chris Robbins, Sergeant Major Chad Herron, Second Lieutenant Andrew Krieger, Staff Sergeant Matthew Cole, First Lieutenant Amanda Dickinson, Senior Master Sergeant Rich Breister, Master Sergeant Paul Gorman, and Staff Sergeant Ryan Malecki. And rounding out this team is the team that put this legislation on the fast track to get something we could bring to the governor and the legislature to get done, and that includes Mr. Mike Hinman, Ms. Randy Millsap, Ms. Jackie Guthrie, Colonel Robin Blader, Ms. Anna Ayler, and Brigadier General, dressed in civilian clothes today, Joni Matthews. This legislation is important to the National Guard because it does three things for our soldiers and our airmen. It gives an equal playing field between state-sponsored active duty benefits and the benefits we get from the federal government when we're on active duty or in a training status. It will, for the first time, if someone were to die on state active duty, give a death gratuity of $100,000. It provides protections for citizens of Wisconsin with a Wisconsin employer who are part of a National Guard in a different state to make sure that they'll get reemployment rights with those employers. And lastly, it provides continuation benefits should somebody get hurt while they're on state active duty, much like we get when we're in a federal status. In short, it's the state of Wisconsin making a contribution and a commitment to continue for our soldiers and our airmen that the families and these great men and women who wear the uniform will get the same benefits whether they're on a state status or in a federal status. And for that, we're deeply grateful. And, sir, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, a special thanks not only for today, not just for your introduction, but for your work and your team's work on this. But thank you, General Dunbar, to you, to all the men and women from the Wisconsin National Guard, many of whom are represented here today, and all those who support and serve with them. And I particularly want to call out Senator Teston and Representative Skoronsky because Pat and Ken not only authored this legislation, but chair the respective committees that it goes through and have been great advocates both for the Guard as well as for our veterans here in the state of Wisconsin. As General Dunbar mentioned, and today is, you can probably already hear the buzz out in the hall and downstairs, we've got, because the legislature was active at the end of the session, we've had a couple weeks now of blocks of time where we go through a whole bunch of bills. We've had some that we do publicly here and there around the state. In total, I think I'm signing 92 more bills after this, so my hand better get ready for all the bill signing. But we purposely wanted to have this publicly. This is something where going into the start of this year, as we talked about finishing off the legislative session and what important things need to be done, General Dunbar brought his team together with me. We then reached out to the legislature, and we really said that we want to make sure that all of the women and men that work for the Wisconsin, that are part of the Wisconsin National Guard, have all the support and benefits that they deserve, no matter what role they're playing. And that ties in well with the larger context. We've said this recently, repeatedly, that we're proud that not only for our Guard, but for any veteran of military service in the state, whether it be through the Wisconsin National Guard, the reserves, or through active duty, that we're the #1 state in America when it comes to veterans benefits. We think that's incredible for those veterans that are here and reside here today. And we think it's an incredible, appealing approach to recruit others who are looking about where to go after retirement, no matter what age they might be here in the state of Wisconsin. And so we've made significant improvements over the years for veterans overall. But when General Dunbar brought the team in and we looked at saying we want to make sure that there aren't inconsistencies, that no matter what area someone is serving on, thankfully, knock on wood, we haven't had a Wisconsin National Guard member casualty through state activation. But we want to make sure that no matter what happens, that people and the dependents of those who serve have the care and support no matter what role they're in. This is also part of a larger effort we started pushing in February, again thanks to General Dunbar and his team, working with my colleagues from other states through the National Governors Association to make sure, in addition to what we're signing here, that while we're a leader, we want to encourage other states to look at doing some of the same things, so that there's really, we like to be out front, but we want to make sure that anyone who serves in the Guard, be it here in the state of Wisconsin or anywhere else across the nation, we think there should be a level playing field in terms of the benefits and support provided, not only in extreme cases, but even in terms of continuation of employment We think that is critically important. Obviously, groups like the Employers Department, the Guard and Reserve, ESGR, for years have advocated and pushed for that, and thanked our employers, our many great employers around the state who more often than not go above and beyond even what the law is. But we want to make sure that the law is clear about benefits, about fair treatment, despite what the role might be, and ultimately about ensuring that all of our members of the Wisconsin National Guard are able to continue to employment no matter what role of service that they provide. So that's why we wanted to sign this publicly, not only to sign this into law, to thank the team specifically involved in putting it together, but really in the larger context, to send a message to every one of the 10,000 strong men and women of the Wisconsin National Guard in both the Air and Army service to the state, to this country. And as one more reason to say, it's another reason for those who might be thinking about joining the National Guard, and one more compelling reason to do so here in the state of Wisconsin. So with that, we'll sign this into law. Day, over 90 pieces of legislation being signed into law today. Many like this bill here that had broad bipartisan support. In many cases, voice votes, so no stated opposition going forward. I think obviously in this case, part of the reason we wanted to draw attention to that is with the Wisconsin National Guard is reminding people that we're just making sure that no matter what role our men and women in the Guard play, whether it's being deployed around the world, where it's being called up to help in another state as part of a national disaster, or whether it's on state service here in the state of Wisconsin, that obviously in the worst case scenario, thankfully that's never happened here, but if someone was called up on state activation, they would be, in this case, would be covered with a death benefit, as well as making sure that employment opportunities continue no matter what role that they play in. We thought it's critically important to sign this in person, to draw attention to our Guard, to thank them, as well as to encourage others who might be thinking about joining the Wisconsin National Guard, and with the work that we're doing, trying to encourage other states to enact similar provisions. So I'll take questions about this bill, about any of the other bills today, or about anything else going on.
I see that Alabama just announced late last week the cumulative cost of the plant fair going to $100 million investment. Does that mean that all bets are off for the plants here, that the negotiations are going and
No, I mean, I think going forward, we've put our best offer on the table in terms of making an offer that's commensurate for a major industry to what the state did for Foxconn to bring the state-of-the-art ecosystem to the state. We're still hopeful. I've had some discussions a few weeks back. We've been working with Mark Hogan, our CEO at the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, and we haven't gotten any indication one way or the other recently as to whether or not it was good, bad, or indifferent. They've been interested. They didn't shut us down. That was always good. We assumed that there were changes being made because of just the industry that they're in, but we thought it was critically important for an industry that big to do what we could to keep them here in the state, even at a time when we have record numbers of people in the workforce and tremendous opportunities for people to be employed elsewhere. We just think that's an important industry.
You or anyone in the political circle on your behalf been approached by the Trump administration about joining the administration?
No.
Can you speak to, if there's an opening for a military position or a secretary position in the Trump administration from here through a next term should you be reelected? Can you say whether you...
100%, I can say with accuracy. Tommy Thompson told me, if not once, 1,000 times, his worst day as governor was better than his best day in the cabinet. So I can unequivocally, without hesitation, tell you I will never willingly leave the role as governor through the end of this next coming term. I'm running for re-election to serve a full term. I respect and honor those who serve in the cabinet, just as I do in my own state. But with that piece of advice alone from Tommy Thompson, he has pounded it into my head over the years, and I can see exactly why he did that. That you can get much, much, much more done as a governor, and it's much, much more fulfilling being a governor than it is being in the cabinet.
Can you comment on James Comey's comment that the president is more likely to be president?
I'll leave that up to the people who are elected for federal offices. That's a federal issue.
Last week, Attorney General Schimmel suggested that, strongly, that voter ID was the key to Ron Johnson and President Trump's victories in Wisconsin in 2016. Do you agree with that assessment? With voter ID, what put those two over the top?
I think the reasons are simple. I think Ron Johnson worked his tail off. People in Washington, including the Republican establishment, wrote him off. We joined with him. I spent months on the weekends campaigning with him around the state. I think he made a great connection. I think at the end in particular, he changed his advertisement so he focused on the positive things and the vision that he had. And I think in the case of the president, President Trump and Vice President Pence, it was clear as I was campaigning for Ron Johnson, I could see people who were not satisfied with Secretary Clinton's campaign. There was a lot of frustration that she didn't come back to the state after losing the primary that spring. And I think the president really connected, particularly with a lot of people in the state who felt like they had not been touched, nationally at least, by leaders from either political party. And I think that more than anything were the reasons why those elections went the way they did.
Eric Garden, someone you've obviously mentioned over the years, had some disturbing allegations against him also trying to resign. Can you tell someone you're in touch with, and what do you make of the call for him to resign?
Well, I think it's a horribly sad situation there. I think looking at what the legislature said there, if those reports are accurate, and it seems like they keep reaffirming those, I don't know how someone stays in that position. I mean, I just think for the citizens of that state, it's difficult, if not impossible, for him to govern.
Last one, please. National Guard question.
About National Guard, right?
You haven't said whether you would send the National Guard calls to support the president's call for sending National Guard troops, but do you support sending Wisconsin National Guard troops?
Yes, and to be clear, even initially when Amy made the original comment, she said, I'm ready to send for a call. We're not going to send them without a call. But from day one, we made it clear that if the president asked for us to deploy troops from the state of Wisconsin to be a part of that effort, absolutely we'd do that. I think it's pretty clear. I remember, when Lee Sherman Dreyfus years ago said the federal government should be limited to, guarding our shores, delivering our mail, and getting out of our lives. That's paraphrasing. I don't know if it's exactly his words, but it's pretty close to that. When you think about guarding our shores and our border, what's more essential for the military than guarding the boundaries of the United States of America, whether it's our shores or our borders? And when you've got a situation, as I mentioned recently, where the borders are clearly not secure, I think whether you're Democrat or Republican, I don't think there's many that would doubt that. The question is how best to act on that. But when Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and George Herbert Walker Bush, all three sent troops from the National Guard to the border in the past, largely driven because of the drug problem we've seen along particularly the southern border, I think it's appropriate for us to take action to secure the border. And if the President of the United States were to ask the state of Wisconsin to call up individuals from the National Guard, we would.
All right, thank everybody.
DOD or DHS, I don't know if you guys have, have they said anything to you about whether they're trying to ask this?
They have not. We just stated that at the time when the issue was brought up, but we have not heard. In fact, that week I was talking to General Dunbar about this and a couple other issues. We haven't gotten any additional notice. Obviously, this weekend, most of our time, General Dunbar was focused on emergency management. We had troops ready if need be. We hadn't gotten a request, but to be called up as part of the unusual weather that we had throughout the weekend. But for us, again, whether it was, our history, you think of a room like this, you go back to 1916, the 32nd, which became part of the Red Arrow in World War I, months before they were called up to join as part of the National Guard with Michigan to form the 32nd, which became the Red Arrow because they first pierced through enemy lines. They were down on the southern border because of issues similar to what we face today. I think the real issue is from the issue of security as it relates to interest from terrorist groups or terrorist-related organizations. Certainly, it's a security standpoint from drugs. Again, it's why you've had several presidents in both parties pushing for that. And even in terms of trafficking, both human trafficking and trafficking of illegal firearms. I was there years ago per an offer by my colleague, Governor Greg Abbott from Texas. What I found more interesting than just being at the border was talking to Texas Public Safety, them showing all the videos, because they have thousands of videos, almost like we do in Wisconsin. We set up for trail cameras to track, where movements are in terms of wildlife in the state. They do it to see movement along the borderline there. And it's remarkable to me to see the stories. Part of the reason why Texas Public Safety wears full body armor like you would in a military operation is because they've mentioned any number of instances where they've interdicted and stopped large sums of drugs from coming over, particularly the Rio Grande, and where they were under assault from lookout posts across the river. And they know just to be safe, they have to be. So it really is, in many ways, much like a military operation. It's why when I gave our statement about that, I said, when Congressman Pocan asked about it, I said, not only is this a part of our history and a part of our responsibility, I would actually take it a step further. I suggested that the administration look at not only the National Guard, but look at what many people have suggested to me in the past, and that is, should we put military training posts along the border, which to me just seems logical, that if you're going to train people, why not put posts along that corridor? It serves a double purpose, not only for training, but in turn it's just more bodies to be along that spot to provide more security. So,
all right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. I need two bills here.
Are you saying Paul Biden should be governor?
you notice my tweet was very specific. I just thought it was funny in light of the birthday cake tweet that when he was elected, I was in diapers. I didn't say one thing one way or the other. I just said it's an interesting observation. I think a lot of people will chuckle at that no matter what age they are. Thanks.